Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion. "We'll be fine," Jake muttered, adjusting the crooked cabinet door for the third time. "Just a little stress. Normal stuff." It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Millbridge, the kind of town where people still wave from their front porches and the air smelled faintly of pine and diesel. Jake Morgan stood barefoot in the kitchen of the small home he'd bought 5 years ago with overtime money and busted knuckles. The place wasn't fancy, just a 2-bedroom ranch with a leaky faucet and scuffed hardwood floors, but it was his. The sound of a notification pinged from the living room. Rachel's phone. Jake froze. She was in the shower. He wiped his hands on a rag, hesitated, then sighed and turned back to the cabinet. "Don't be that guy," he told himself. "Don't turn into the suspicious husband before you even get married." He drilled in the last screw and stepped back, admiring the fixed door. Not perfect, but good enough. The bathroom door creaked open behind him. Rachel appeared wrapped in a towel, water still clinging to her shoulders. Her long brunette hair dripped a little trail along the tile. She looked radiant in the soft glow of the hallway light, but distracted. "Hey," Jake said gently, smiling. "Cabinet's fixed. You can thank me later." Rachel barely looked at him. "Oh, thanks, babe. I've got a lot on my mind." She drifted toward the bedroom like a ghost, leaving a faint scent of lavender behind. Jake followed, trying to keep the tone light. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay with wedding planning?" She rummaged through her drawers. "Yeah, it's just work. Mitchell's got me managing 2 new accounts, and his schedule's a nightmare. Plus, my dress fittings this week, and my sister's being a nightmare." Jake sat on the edge of the bed. "You're always tired. You're hardly eating. You won't even let me rub your feet like I used to." Rachel laughed, forced. "That's because last time you tried, you fell asleep halfway through." Jake smirked, but his eyes didn't. "Maybe, but something's off. You barely talk to me anymore." She turned, towel now replaced by shorts and an oversized t-shirt. Her arms folded, defensive. "Jake, don't start. Not tonight." He stood up. "Start what?" "This," she snapped. "You always do this when something good is happening. You pick at it until it falls apart." His jaw tightened. "I'm not picking at anything. I'm trying to understand what's changed." She looked away. "I'm tired." "That's it." Jake's shoulders sank. "Okay." Rachel climbed into bed, grabbing her phone. Her screen lit up. Jake caught a glimpse of a text notification. "Mitchell G. Tomorrow's meeting moved. Want to grab drinks after?" She tilted the screen away quickly and replied without hesitation. The brightness on her face was different, animated. Jake didn't say anything. He stared at the floor, his mind racing. Rachel looked up. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Staring at me like I'm doing something wrong." "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to." She turned over. "Good night." Jake lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling. The bed felt wider than it used to. The next morning came early. Jake's alarm buzzed at 5:15 a.m. He rolled out of bed, kissed Rachel's cheek, she barely stirred, and laced up his steel-toed boots. Outside, the world was still dark, dew clinging to the grass like a whisper. He climbed into his work truck and headed to the first job site, country music playing low on the radio. His coworker, Darren, lit a cigarette as Jake pulled up. "Morning, lover boy," Darren said, grinning. "Big day coming soon." Jake nodded. "Yeah, 2 more weeks. Still letting that corporate hottie marry a grease monkey like you? Damn miracle." Jake chuckled, but there was no joy in it. "She's not like that." "Sure she ain't." Darren winked. "Just don't let her boss steal her before you tie the knot." Jake laughed politely, but his stomach twisted. That evening, Rachel came home late again. Hairstyle, makeup flawless. She carried the scent of a fancy bar, gin and tonics and polished wood. Jake watched her walk in and set her bag down. "Long day?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. She didn't meet his eyes. Mitchell's being a control freak. Wanted to go over tomorrow's brief in person. At 9:30 at night, she flinched, just barely. He's demanding. Jake studied her face. "And is that your perfume? Or his cologne?" Rachel's smile turned sharp. "You don't trust me anymore?" He stepped back, wounded. "I want to, but I can't shake this feeling like you're slipping away from me." She picked up her phone again. "Maybe you're just imagining things." Jake turned and walked into the kitchen. He needed air. He needed clarity. He poured himself a glass of water, but his hands shook as he lifted it. He remembered the nights they used to stay up until 2 a.m. talking about their dreams, about having a little girl with Rachel's eyes and his stubbornness. Now she came home and barely acknowledged him. He looked out the kitchen window. The neighbor's dog barked at nothing. The world kept spinning, but his had shifted. That night, as they lay in bed, Jake kept his back turned. Rachel was scrolling on her phone again, whispering texts, giggles. Jake stared at the darkness. He didn't say a word. "We'll be fine," he muttered, adjusting the crooked cabinet door for the third time. "Just a little stress. Normal stuff." Chapter 2. Cracks beneath the surface. It started with the lipstick. Rachel had never been one for flashy colors, always kept it natural, soft, understated. But now she wore bold reds and shimmering glosses, shades Jake didn't recognize. One morning, as she rushed out the door, he caught sight of a new perfume bottle on the dresser, something expensive, French-sounding. It hadn't been there a week ago. "You going all out for the office lately?" Jake asked, half joking, watching her twist the cap back on the bottle. Rachel didn't even glance up from the mirror. "Corporate meetings. Appearances matter." He nodded slowly, though his stomach knotted. The changes came like drips from a leaky faucet, small, steady, easy to dismiss at first. But now the floor was damp beneath his feet, and Jake could no longer pretend it was just in his head. It was a Thursday afternoon when the seed of real suspicion was planted. Jake was finishing up a job in town, a clogged sewer mained behind Millbridge Bank. He just climbed back into his truck, hands sore and shirt damp with sweat, when Darren slid into the passenger seat. "Phew, smells like victory and 10-year-old diapers," Darren joked, cracking a window. Jake grinned faintly, wiping his hands on a rag. "You still doing that engagement dinner thing next weekend?" Darren asked, scrolling through his phone. "Yeah, her folks are coming in from Ohio. She's stressing about the seating chart like it's the State of the Union." Darren laughed. "Better you than me, man." Then he smirked and elbowed Jake. "Hey, better hope she ain't out with her boss too often. I hear those exec types love playing with the help." Jake stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Darren held up his hands. "I'm just saying, pretty girl, late nights, and a boss who drives a Beamer. Man's instincts start twitching, you know." Jake forced a laugh, but it came out hollow. He dropped Darren off and sat in the cab alone for a while, staring out at the sun sinking behind the power lines. That night, Rachel came home well past 9:00. She walked in wearing heels and a tight blazer he hadn't seen before. Jake stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. "You said you'd be home by 7. She sighed, setting her purse down. "Mitchell dropped a last-minute report on me. I didn't have a choice." Jake frowned. "But I called your office. The receptionist said you'd left hours ago." Rachel blinked just a second too long. "I stopped to grab a drink with Carla after. To vent." She didn't answer when I called, either. Rachel rolled her eyes and walked past him. "Jesus, Jake, are you tracking my every move now? Since when did you turn into this jealous weirdo?" His voice rose before he could stop it. "I'm not jealous. I'm confused." "You're lying, Rachel." She turned on her heel. "Oh, so now I'm a liar? You never used to come home smelling like a bar. You never used to hide your phone or spend 10 minutes getting ready just to see spreadsheets." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "So, I'm not allowed to care about how I look? Is that it? Sorry, I don't want to look like a slob while I climb the ladder at work." Jake's hands curled into fists at his sides. "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it." "No, Jake. I don't know. Because lately, everything I do gets picked apart. If I work late, I'm suspicious. If I try harder at work, I'm a cheater. What exactly do you want from me?" "I want honesty," he said quietly. "I want my fiancée back." She softened for a moment, almost. But then she scoffed, brushing past him. "Maybe your idea of a relationship is stuck in the 50s. Sorry if I don't want to come home every night reeking of sewage and watching reruns." Jake stood there, stunned. That one hurt. She never said anything like that before. The silence between them stretched like a wire pulled too tight. She grabbed her phone from the counter and stormed into the bedroom. Jake followed, still clinging to hope. "Rachel, if something's wrong, if you're not happy, just say it. We can fix it. But please don't gaslight me like I'm imagining things. She turned slowly, eyes cold now. You really want to talk gaslighting? You're the one creating drama where there is none. Maybe you're just insecure. Jake flinched, as if struck. Rachel stepped closer, voice dripping with calculated sympathy. You think I don't notice how you look at yourself in the mirror? How you feel small in my world now? Admit it. You're scared of not being enough. He couldn't even speak. She smirked, patted his cheek like a child, and turned to leave the room. Grow up, Jake. Not everything is about you. He sat on the edge of the bed after she left. The house was quiet again, but the air buzzed with tension. He felt like a man slowly drowning, watching the surface get further and further away. Her words echoed in his head, cruel and sticky. Maybe you're just insecure. Maybe you're not enough. He'd never doubted his worth before. He worked hard, provided, loved her with everything he had. But now he was questioning everything. Her, himself, the life they were building. Jake rose, walked into the kitchen, and stared out the window. He didn't see her reflection beside him anymore. Just his own face, tired, hardened. And that was when he realized. He begins to doubt himself. Chapter 3. Temptation and Control. The wine glasses clinked delicately, laughter spilling across the upscale rooftop terrace like syrup. Jake shifted awkwardly in his department store blazer, feeling a bead of sweat crawl down his spine as he adjusted his collar for the third time. The company party had been Rachel's idea. It'll be fun, she had said. You'll finally get to meet Mitchell. Fun wasn't the word Jake would use. Stiff, polished, sterile. That was more like it. He watched Rachel from across the patio. She was radiant tonight, black dress hugging her figure, her lips glossed just right. She was in her element, floating between suits and highball glasses like she belonged there. Maybe she did. Jake hovered near the hors d'oeuvres table, chewing a stuffed mushroom that tasted like cardboard. He tried not to look like a guy who didn't belong, but he felt it. Every second, Rachel noticed him and waved him over. He plastered on a smile and joined her. Mitchell, this is my fiancé, Jake, Rachel said, her arm looping around his waist like a polite formality. Mitchell Grant turned to face him. The man was everything Jake wasn't: sharp suit, gym-sculpted build, $1,000 watch glinting in the light. His eyes assessed Jake in a flash. Oh, you're the septic guy, Mitchell said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Rachel's told us all about your heroic work. Jake extended his hand. Nice to meet you. Mitchell shook it with too much force and a cocked brow. So, you clean people's shit for a living? That's noble. Rachel laughed. A little too loud. A little too hard. Jake's jaw tightened. It's honest work. Mitchell shrugged, sipping his whiskey. Sure. Someone's got to do the dirty jobs so the rest of us can keep the lights on, right? Jake offered a tight smile. Yeah, and someone's got to throw it out when the toilet's back up. Mitchell blinked, surprised. Rachel elbowed Jake gently. Play nice, she said, forcing a grin. Mitchell gave a chuckle. You've got some bark. Good for you. Jake stood there, half smiling, mentally reeling. Every part of him screamed to knock the smirk off Mitchell's face, but he swallowed it. This wasn't his world. This wasn't a bar or a work site. Here, people played power games with veiled insults and smiled while twisting the knife. Excuse me, Jake said finally. I need some air. He found the balcony and gripped the railing, the city lights twinkling below like a world he didn't belong to. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in over a year, and took a long, bitter drag. Moments later, Rachel appeared behind him. What was that? She asked, arms crossed. What was what? He replied without turning. Your attitude. You embarrass me. Jake turned slowly. He insulted me, Rachel. He was joking. You took it too seriously. Jake shook his head, staring at the ground. You laughed. Like it was funny. She hesitated. I didn't mean to. He looked at her. Did you tell him I clean shit for a living? Or did he dig that up on his own? Rachel flushed. It came up. I didn't say it like that. You talk about me like I'm a charity project? He snapped, voice low. Rachel stepped back. Don't be dramatic. Jake flicked the cigarette off the balcony. I came here for you. You could have defended me. She softened slightly, touching his arm. I'm sorry. Mitchell's a lot, I know. Let's just go home. The ride home was quiet. Rachel stared out the window, texting. Jake gripped the wheel hard, veins showing on his forearms. Back at the house, Rachel headed to the bathroom. Jake sat on the couch, running his hands through his hair. His phone buzzed. His buddy Darren had texted. So, how's life in the land of the suits? Still smell like sewage, or did they spray you with champagne? Jake didn't reply. Rachel came out, makeup off, robe tied lazily. Jake stood. Can we talk? She blinked. Now. Yeah, now's good. She sighed, arms folding. Fine. I need to ask you something, he said. And I want the truth. She arched a brow. Okay. You and Mitchell. Is something going on? Rachel blinked. Then she laughed. Are you serious? Jake didn't budge. You defend him more than you defend me. You light up around him. You're always texting. You're barely home. She rolled her eyes. Jesus, Jake. Just answer the question. Rachel walked past him toward the bedroom. No, nothing is going on. He's my boss, and he respects me. Unlike you, apparently. Jake followed her. I do respect you. That's why I'm asking. Because I don't like how this feels. I'm starting to feel like I'm competing. Rachel turned, her voice sharp. Then maybe you should try harder. That hit him like a slap. He stood there, stunned, while she climbed into bed. Rachel, I'm tired, she said, turning her back to him. Not tonight. Jake stood at the doorway for a long moment, the sound of his own heartbeat loud in his ears. He didn't even know who he was talking to anymore. He turned off the light and sat in the dark, thoughts racing. And somewhere in that silence, the emotional spiral began, unnoticed, unstoppable. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. It was a Thursday morning when Jake Morgan made a decision he rarely made. He called off work. His boss was surprised. You okay, Jake? Jake faked a cough. Think I caught something. Just gonna rest. But rest wasn't on the agenda. After weeks of unease, of cold shoulders, and phony explanations, he needed clarity. And maybe, just maybe, a spontaneous gesture would be the spark they needed. So he stopped by the diner near Main Street, picked up Rachel's favorite, turkey club with no mayo, extra crispy fries, and even a slice of cherry pie. Just like old times. He looked at the bag on the passenger seat and forced a hopeful smile. Today will be different. Downtown traffic was light. The glass tower of Everest Financial glistened in the sun like a smug monument. Jake had always hated it, a place full of people who looked through him like he was invisible. He parked, grabbed the food, and headed inside. The lobby was marble and cold, clean in a way that felt unnatural. At the reception desk sat a young woman with tight curls and oversized glasses. She smiled politely. Hi, I'm here to surprise Rachel Whitmore, Jake said. She's on the 12th floor. The woman typed for a moment, then tilted her head. Oh, Rachel actually left a few hours ago. Jake blinked. She did. Yeah, the receptionist said casually. She and Mr. Grant left together. Around 10 maybe? Jake's hand tightened around the paper bag. Did she say where they were going? The woman hesitated. No, but they mentioned something about rescheduling a client meeting, maybe at his condo. I'm not sure. Jake nodded slowly. Right. Thanks. He walked back to the truck, the bag of food forgotten on the seat. Mitchell Grant's condo was located in the heart of the city, top floor of a high-rise with concierge service and valet parking. It was the kind of place where Jake felt instantly out of place, like his work boots alone dropped the value of the property. The doorman gave him a polite nod. Hi, Jake said, adjusting his flannel collar. I'm here for Mitchell Grant. He's expecting me. The doorman studied him, then shrugged. Penthouse, 25th floor, elevator on the left. The ride up felt endless. Jake's heart thudded in his chest like a war drum. He didn't have a plan. Just a sinking feeling that had grown too heavy to ignore. As the elevator doors slid open, a wave of silence hit him. The hallway was pristine, white walls, silver sconces, and not a sound in the air. He walked to the only door at the end and tried the handle. Unlocked. Jake stepped inside. At first, the room seemed empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the living room in golden light. A suit jacket was thrown over the back of a leather chair. A glass of wine sat half empty on a marble countertop. Then he heard laughter, coming from a bedroom. His legs moved before his brain could stop them. Down the hall. Open door. And there they were. Rachel, naked, straddling Mitchell in his bed, her head thrown back in laughter, her hands gripping his chest, their clothes scattered like debris across the hardwood floor. Jake stopped breathing. Rachel turned, mid-laugh, and froze. For a second, all three of them just stared at one another. The air turned electric. Rachel's lips parted, as if to speak, but no apology came. Mitchell raised an eyebrow, unbothered. Rachel smirked. "What are you going to do?" she said mockingly. "Cry." Chapter 5. The Walk of Silence. For a moment, Jake didn't move. The image was burned into his brain, Rachel's bare back, the sheets tangled around her hips, Mitchell's hand resting smugly on her thigh like she was property. The scent of sweat and expensive cologne choked the air. Rachel's laugh still echoed in the corners of his skull, sharp and cruel. She didn't cover herself. She didn't flinch. She didn't even look ashamed. Jake's fists clenched at his sides. His breathing came slow and deep, but his heart thudded like it wanted to tear out of his chest. "I said," Rachel repeated, her voice drenched in mockery. "What are you going to do, cry?" Mitchell smirked from the bed. "Looks like we broke your little plumbing heart." Jake's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. No screaming, no yelling, no punches thrown, just a slow exhale through his nose as he turned around and walked out. Mitchell's voice followed him down the hall like the stench of a clogged drain. "Don't forget your dignity on the way out, septic boy." Rachel cackled behind him, a sound that would haunt him far longer than he knew. Jake didn't look back. The elevator ride felt like it took hours. His reflection stared back from the polished metal walls, blank, expressionless, but with eyes blazing. Rage boiled beneath the surface, held in check only by sheer willpower. He stepped out into the crisp evening air and into a world that looked exactly the same. But nothing was. He climbed into his truck and just sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles whitened. His mouth was dry. His chest ached, not from exertion, but from something deeper, something raw. Jake drove aimlessly at first, through the streets of downtown, past families at sidewalk cafes, couples laughing over lattes, people walking their dogs. The city didn't care that his entire world had just collapsed. He passed the park where he and Rachel had taken engagement photos just 2 months ago. Her smile in those pictures wasn't fake. At least, he didn't think it was. How long had it been going on? Had she ever meant it? Was I just convenient, safe, a placeholder until something better came along? The questions circled like vultures. Jake turned down a quiet road near the industrial district. The sun was low now, casting long shadows over the warehouses and service yards. The city's glamour was gone here. This was his world, sweat-stained uniforms, rusted tools, and machines that groaned like tired bones. He pulled up outside the septic yard. His key card buzzed the gate open. Inside, everything was as it always had been. 5 trucks parked neatly in rows, hoses coiled like sleeping snakes, the air thick with the faint, familiar tang of waste and bleach. Jake stepped out and lit a cigarette, staring at truck 4. It was the emergency night service rig. Bigger tank, stronger pump, fully loaded. He exhaled slowly, the smoke curling upward. Then the thought came, not like a spark, but like a lightning bolt. Cold, brilliant, merciless. He looked up at the stars breaking through the dusk and whispered to himself, "Let's see how noble my job really is." He walked over to the logbook on the office wall and flipped to the next page. Truck 4. Signed out. Date. Today time. 6:47 p.m. Technician. Jake Morgan. He scribbled his name with a shaking hand. Behind him, the massive truck hummed quietly, ready to move. He climbed up into the cab, started the ignition, and watched the diesel engine cough to life. As he pulled out of the yard, Jake felt a strange calm settle over him, like he was floating. There was no hesitation now, no confusion, no pain, only purpose, only the plan. And somewhere in the back of his mind, beneath the haze of heartbreak and fury, he heard Mitchell's smug voice echo again. "Don't forget your dignity on the way out, septic boy." Chapter 6. Vengeance Delivered. The digital clock on the truck's dash glowed red. 1:47 a.m. Jake Morgan sat behind the wheel of the septic rig, engine idling quietly in the shadows of a narrow backstreet. The city fell asleep, or maybe it just didn't care what was about to happen. He stared at the sleek silhouette of Mitchell Grant's building, tall, smug, and glass-wrapped like a monument to ego. A place where people like Jake were invisible, where women like Rachel were swept away by power, money, and charm dripping with arrogance. Jake's hands, calloused and stained, rested on the steering wheel. But they weren't shaking. Not anymore. Tonight wasn't about heartbreak. It was about justice. He turned off the engine and stepped out, boots hitting the pavement with a quiet thud. The alley behind the building was dim, lit only by the glow of a distant street lamp and the flickering of a faulty bulb mounted to the wall. He pulled a massive industrial hose from its hook along the side of the truck. It was heavy, thick, slick with residue, even after last week's washdown. A beast of a thing, built to pump thousands of gallons of human waste through pipes no man wanted to touch. Tonight, it had a different job. Jake knew this building. He'd studied it hours ago, circling it slowly from a distance. He had spotted one critical detail. A second-floor window, Mitchell's window, slightly cracked open, maybe forgotten, maybe for the breeze. It would be enough. He uncoiled the hose, dragging it through the alley with controlled precision. Metal scraped lightly against the bricks. He glanced up, checking for cameras. There were none back here. Too secure to care about the trash delivery zone, apparently. Typical. The ladder was where he left it, leaning against the building, hidden behind a dumpster. He set it quietly beneath the window, hoisted the hose over his shoulder, and climbed one step at a time. His breath was slow, deliberate, not from fear, but from focus. This wasn't a wild act of vengeance. It was surgical. He reached the window and peered in. Dim lighting from Mitchell's modern sconces bathed the apartment in a soft amber glow. Art on the walls, granite counters, a bottle of half-drunk wine on the island. The floor gleamed like polished marble, and right in front of him, clear, direct, almost too perfect, was the window's gap. Jake wedged his fingers in, lifted slowly. It opened easily. He slipped the hose through. No alarms, no motion, just the silent hiss of bitter revenge. He descended back to the ground, wiped his palms on his jeans, and moved to the truck. He turned the valve. At first, there was just a low mechanical hum, the soft groan of pressure building. Then came a sound, thick, sludgy, revolting. A dull, wet gurgle as the pump kicked into full gear. Gallons of raw sewage, human waste, toilet paper, kitchen grease, chemical runoff, rushed through the hose like a brown flood from hell. Jake stood in the shadows, his arms crossed as he watched the hose vibrate with life. He pictured filling the polished floors, soaking the Italian rugs, flooding into Mitchell's $9,000 sectional and Rachel's carefully curated wardrobe of designer clothes, soaking into every smug inch of their comfort. Upstairs, he imagined them sleeping soundly, until the smell woke them, until the sound of gurgling, bubbling liquid reached their ears, until they stepped out of bed barefoot into ankle-deep filth, until the stench filled their nostrils with a horror they couldn't name. Jake didn't smile. He didn't need to. This wasn't about pleasure. It was about balance. A few more minutes passed. The gauge ticked down, tank now 2/3 empty, still pumping. He leaned against the brick wall and lit a cigarette. The only sound in the alley, the low mechanical churn of the pump and the occasional splatter echoing from inside. The scent had begun to drift now, crawling out the window and curling into the night air like a warning. It was thick, rancid, enough to make a normal man gag. Jake had lived through worse. He flicked ash into the street and watched a stray cat dart out of a dumpster and disappear into the dark. A siren wailed a few blocks away, unrelated. The city groaned around him, unaware of the quiet war being waged in the penthouse of privilege above. He closed his eyes for a moment, picturing Rachel's face, smirking, smug, triumphant as she straddled Mitchell in that bed. Then he pictured her slipping on the flooded tiles, screaming, gagging, trying to salvage her designer purse from floating in sludge. He exhaled smoke and whispered into the night. Let's see you laugh now. Chapter 7. Aftermath and Ashes. By 7:22 a.m., the first photo hit Twitter. A hazmat-suited worker, knee-deep in a glistening brown sludge, standing inside what used to be Mitchell Grant's $1.8 million penthouse. The caption read, VP of Everest Financial? More like King of Crap. Sewage gate by 8:04 a.m. TMZ had it. By 8:30 it was trending. Penthouse puddle, slick Mitchell shit show, corporate flush, social media lit up like wildfire, photos, videos, Reddit threads. One clip showed Rachel, her hair matted with filth, screaming into her phone as hazmat crews escorted her out of the building. Another showed Mitchell, shirtless, covered in what looked like sewage water, kicking a trash can over his news cameras rolled. Jake sat in his truck parked outside a job site, the engine running, the radio off. He scrolled through his phone in silence, watching the world react. His co-workers hadn't seen him smile in weeks. Now, he wasn't smiling, but there was something harder, something colder, settling in his eyes. A quiet satisfaction that didn't need a grin. His phone buzzed. Rachel. Jake, please, I need to talk to you. Please. Another. Rachel. I don't know how you knew, but I'm sorry. Please. Can we just talk? Then a missed call. 2 more. A voicemail. Jake didn't open them. He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat like it was infected. He didn't need to hear it. Let her arrive. By noon, the local news was running a full segment. They had footage from bystanders, clips from inside the elevator, and a long zoomed-in shot of the luxury condo's interior, ruined carpets, floating furniture, brown water bubbling out from underneath the front door. Sources say the incident appears to be intentional. Authorities are investigating whether this was an act of vandalism or was something far more personal, the anchor read. Jake leaned back in a break room chair, sipping a black coffee as his coworkers watched the report. Darren turned to him, eyes wide. Yo, man, that is legendary. Jake raised an eyebrow. What is? The Mitchell thing. Did you see it? Bro, someone pumped a whole septic tank into his penthouse. I'm talking total wipeout. His company's stock dropped 6% in 4 hours. Jake feigned surprise. Damn, that's crazy. Crazy. Darren laughed. It's poetic. Guy had it coming too. Heard he was sleeping around with some dude's girl. Honestly, whoever did that. Hero status. Jake sipped his coffee. Yeah, guess karma works fast. By early evening, Jake was home. The house felt quieter now. Cleaner, somehow. The storm inside him had passed. Now there was only stillness. He sat on the porch steps, boots unlaced, the breeze tugging at his shirt sleeves. The sun dipped low over the tree line. The sky was streaked in orange and pink. That's when he heard it, the soft crunch of tires on gravel. Rachel's car. He didn't move. Her engine cut off. A car door slammed. Then came footsteps. Slow, hesitant. He could smell her before he saw her. Cheap perfume trying to mask smoke, stress, and desperation. Jake. Her voice cracked. He looked up. She stood a few feet away. Makeup smeared, eyes bloodshot, her dress wrinkled and stained like she hadn't changed since the incident. Her once pristine aura was shattered. She looked broken. She began, her voice shaking. I didn't know where else to go. He said nothing. I lost everything today, she continued. My job, Mitchell, my place, my reputation. Everyone thinks I'm some joke, some gold-digging tramp. Jake blinked slowly, unmoved. Rachel stepped closer. I made a mistake. Okay, I got swept up. He said things, promised things. But he didn't care about me. Not really. Not like you did. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, staring out toward the yard. I was stupid, she whispered. I threw away the one man who actually loved me. Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. I'm not asking for you to forgive me, Jake, she said, choking back a sob. I needed to tell you. I needed to say I'm sorry. She waited. Wind rustled the leaves. Jake stood slowly, brushed the dirt from his jeans, and walked to the front door. Rachel's eyes widened. Jake, please. Please just look at me. He turned the doorknob. She reached for him. Say something. Anything. Scream. Hate me. Just don't leave me in silence. He opened the door, paused, then stepped inside and shut it behind him. No slam. No fury. Just finality. Behind the closed door, her sobs broke open, raw and messy, echoing across the porch into the cooling evening air. She's left sobbing on his porch. Chapter 8. Digging Through the Dirt. Jake didn't go back to work for 2 weeks. The first few mornings, he just sat in silence at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands, staring out the window as if the trees could answer the ache inside him. The house was too quiet. The silence wasn't peace, it was weight. On the third day, he called his sister, Molly. "Can I come over?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't used it in days. Molly didn't ask questions. "Of course. I'll put coffee on." She greeted him with a long hug and a plate of pancakes. Her husband and kids gave him space. They didn't ask what happened, but Molly saw it in his eyes. Something had broken, and Jake wasn't sure how to put it back together. "You don't have to talk about it yet," she said gently. "But you will. And when you do, we're here." He finally told Darren a week later, over beers in the garage. Jake sat on a folding chair, arms resting on his knees, staring at the concrete floor like it held the script. "I caught her," he said quietly, "with her boss, Mitchell, in his bed. She laughed when she saw me." Laughed. Darren didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Jesus, Jake." Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah." Darren reached into the cooler, cracked another beer, and handed it over. "You didn't deserve that," he said. "Nobody does." Jake took the beer, but didn't drink it. "I think I loved her more than I love myself. That's over now." Jake nodded again. "Yeah, that part of me's gone." The next Monday, he booked a session with a therapist. It was a quiet little office across town. Earth-tone walls. A soft-spoken woman named Dr. Harding who let him speak slowly, in pieces. At first, it was just about Rachel. Then, it was about everything else. "I don't even know who I am without her," Jake admitted in the second session. "That's okay," Dr. Harding replied. "This is where you find out." Jake began running in the mornings, slow at first, wheezing after 2 blocks. Then further, faster. He joined a gym, cut the junk food, stopped drinking every night. The physical pain, the sore legs, the burning lungs felt good. Real. Honest. It gave shape to the emotional storm still unwinding in his chest. He stood taller now, slept better, looked in the mirror, and didn't see the broken man anymore. He saw someone rebuilding, someone worth respecting, even if only by himself. Meanwhile, the world spun on. And Rachel? She was falling. News of the condo flood hadn't died down. Mitchell's business took a hit, but he was quick to recover. He fired her the same week and fed his PR team a story. An affair gone toxic, an employee who crossed boundaries, a scandal she brought on herself. Rumors swirled. Whispers grew. Rachel became radioactive. Friends she once bragged to ghosted her. Her gym membership was quietly reassigned. Her name became a punchline at brunch tables and water coolers. She moved into a cheaper apartment, had to sell her car. Her phone number changed twice. Jake didn't keep tabs on her, but small-town gossip doesn't need an invitation. It happened by accident. Jake was grabbing a few groceries at the store, protein bars, eggs, apples, when he turned the corner into the frozen food aisle and nearly walked into her. Rachel. She froze when she saw him. She looked like a ghost of the woman he used to know. Her hair was frizzed and unkempt. No makeup. Pale. There were dark circles under her eyes. She clutched a bag of off-brand frozen meals like it was the only thing tethering her to the moment. "Jake," she whispered. He didn't respond. Just looked at her. Her voice trembled. "You look different." Jake glanced down at himself. Fitter, leaner, stronger. Even his posture had changed. "I've been working on myself," he said simply. Rachel's lips parted like she wanted to say something poetic, but all that came out was, "I miss you." He tilted his head slightly, studying her face, not with longing but clarity. "You don't miss me," he said quietly. "You miss who you could manipulate." She blinked. He stepped past her, card in hand. "That version of me died." Chapter 9. Rebirth in Mud. It started with a logo. Jake's at the kitchen table, a notepad in one hand and a steaming cup of black coffee in the other. His sketch was rough, just a scribble of a bird rising, wings stretched wide, flames curling from its tail. The phoenix, born from ash, reborn through fire. But Jake wasn't a designer. He didn't need it to be pretty. He needed it to mean something. He stared at it for a long time before whispering to himself, Yeah, that's the one. The next day, he withdrew most of his savings. Every overtime hour, every holiday he skipped, every vacation he'd never taken. It was a risk, a gamble. But Jake had nothing to lose and a life to build. He registered the business under a name that made people pause. Phoenix Septic Solutions. Sounds intense, said the clerk at the business license office. Jake smiled. Good. Let him remember it. Starting wasn't easy. He bought an old septic rig, used, rusted in places, but dependable. He repainted it himself, spraying the Crimson Bird logo across the tank side. He built the website late at night, learning as he went. A buddy of his from high school helped with the permits and contracts. But the real turning point came when he posted a flyer outside a local VFW. Now hiring vets and those who deserve a second shot. Not afraid of hard work or dirty hands. Within days, 3 men showed up. There was Marco, a 42-year-old Gulf War vet with PTSD and a limp. He'd been sleeping in his car. Tyrell, 28, fresh out of a 2-year stint for petty theft, desperate for a clean start. And Clint, 52, ex-con, tattoos up his arms, tough as nails but dead serious about getting his life right. Jake hired them all. You're not here for pity, he told them that first morning. You're here because I know what it's like to come out of something ugly and build from scratch. Marco nodded. Then let's build. Business grew fast. Turns out, folks respected someone who'd been through hell and didn't hide it. Jake's team became local legends, not just for the work they did, but the way they carried themselves. They showed up on time, worked hard, never cut corners. Word spread. One elderly woman wrote a glowing Facebook post. I've never seen a septic crew treat my property with such care. They even helped my husband back up the stairs. True gentlemen in work boots. Calls poured in. Jake reinvested every dollar in a better gear, training, and bonuses. His guys started smiling again, laughing, standing tall. Marco found housing. Tyrell started night classes. Clint reconnected with his daughter. They weren't just pumping waste, they were reclaiming dignity. Months later, the town held its annual Founders Festival in the park, craft tents, barbecue smoke in the air, kids running with balloon swords. Local businesses had booths. Jake almost skipped it, but Marco insisted. You built something real, man. Time people saw it. So Jake went. They parked the Crimson septic truck at the edge of the lot, set up a folding table with business cards, photos, and even free branded t-shirts. People came in curious at first, then impressed. You're the guy who started the Phoenix company? Heard about you through my cousin. Said your crew saved their basement after that flood. My son's looking for work. You still hiring? Jake answered them all, calm, confident, present. He was mid-conversation with a retired contractor when a young woman with a press badge approached him, notepad in hand. Hi, mind if I ask a quick question? Jake shrugged. Sure. She smiled. Your company's kind of local comeback story. Veteran hires, former inmates, community rebuilding. Everyone's talking about you. Jake nodded. That's good to hear. She flipped a page. So what inspired it all? I mean, why septic work? Why now? He looked down for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Then his eyes met hers. Steady, honest, unapologetic. Revenge and redemption both come from shit, he said. Depends on how you use it. People around him laughed, but the fire in his eyes was real. Chapter 10. Closure at the window. The envelope arrived on a gray Thursday morning, slipping under the front door like an unwelcome ghost. Jake picked it up with one hand while pouring his coffee with the other. The paper felt thicker than usual, fancy, embossed with gold lettering. Rachel Whitmore and David Keaton, it was the wedding invitation. For a moment, the world tilted sideways. He stared at the names, her name, paired with some guy he barely knew. Some bland, insurance agent type who'd never leave his keys in the front door or mock Jake's boots or laugh at his job. David Keaton. It felt like a punch. Clean, precise, like a fresh cut, reopening an old wound. Jake ran his thumb across the envelope, tracing the edges slowly, the paper rough beneath his skin. He thought about the night he'd stood in the alley behind Mitchell's penthouse, hose in hand, eyes blazing with fury and cold resolve. The night he delivered his vengeance, drenched in darkness and sludge. He shook his head and tossed the invitation into the trash. It landed with a soft crinkle. That was that. Later that evening, Jake found himself driving through the city streets, his headlights cutting through the fog, settling low over cracked pavement. He wasn't sure where he was going, but something had pulled him to the old industrial district, the place where the septic yard sat, the alley where his revenge played out like a grim symphony. He parked the truck near the rusty dumpster where he'd leaned that night. The street was silent except for the faint hum of distant traffic and the occasional drip of water running off the fire escapes. Jake stepped out and pulled his jacket tighter against the cool night air. His boots echoed against the concrete as he walked toward the brick wall, toward the building where the window had once been cracked open, waiting for the torrent of filth to pour inside. He stopped beneath the wall and looked up. The window was no longer open. It was sealed tight, boarded up, and painted over with gray primer, a blunt end to a chapter he never wanted to revisit. Jake's breath came out in small clouds, fogging in the cold air. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, the screen lighting his face in the dark. There was a message. "Hey, are you free tonight? Dinner?" Megan, the woman who had slowly worked her way into his life over the past few months. Not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with quiet dinners, laughter shared over cheap wine, and a kindness Jake had thought he'd lost forever. Jake smiled softly. "On my way." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked up again at the sealed window. His thoughts swirled like the fog drifting across the cracked pavement. You don't cry. You rebuild. Stronger. Smarter. Dirtier if you have to. The city breathed around him, its steel and grit, its light and shadow. Jake turned his back on the alley, on the ghosts trapped in the brick and mortar, on the window where the worst of him had broken and burned. As he walked toward his truck, his steps steady and sure, he whispered the truth he'd carved into his soul through fire and mud. Revenge doesn't heal you, but it sure as hell clears the rot out.